Good evening, friends. On a Sunday evening, I am here to discuss with you the management of sudden collapse in a smaller district setups. Friends, this topic is important because majority of the surgeons in India are peripheral surgeons, say good 95% of them. They are either working in a small government hospital or a trust charitable hospital, or they have their own small nursing homes, a couple run or a hospital run by two specialists together. Now the problems are very different in a smaller system, and it is interesting that around 36 years of my life I spent in a similar kind of setup, performing a lot of complicated, complex major jobs with results which are comparable. When Dr. Umesh Raj raised this topic this week, I thought it's high time for me to share some of the ideas, principles of practice which I have done. So this has got two components, technical and social. In technical, I would lay my emphasis on prevention of such events. Managing is difficult when they happen. Let me start with a very emphatic diagnosis and a word. Sudden deterioration of a surgical patient is invariably suddenly noticed. It has not happened suddenly. It happens over the time between morning rounds and the evening rounds. There is nobody sensible to look after the patient during that period. So the term called sudden deterioration, sudden collapse is incorrect. It is sudden noticing of a gross, grave deterioration of the patient. So let me start on preventive aspect. Remember, all the discussion of this revolves around 5H and 5Ts, which we must get integrated into our junior doctors. Invariably, most smaller nursing homes have got a BAMS or a GMS doctor. We need to train, we need to put up this chart, because there will be times when you are operating somebody else, you are out of your nursing home, you are in your washroom, or you have gone to some market and your patient deteriorates. So I would love all of you should put a signboard on your nursing station, on your doctor's duty room, in your critical area, the 5H. This is ACLS. The 5 touch, good evening, Dr. Taneja, welcome. So 5H are hypovolemia, hypoxia, H-ion. H-ion means acidosis, hypo or hyperkalemia, and hypothermia. I repeat, hypovolemia, hypoxia, H-ion means acidosis, hypokalemia, hyperkalemia, and hypothermia. The 5 T's to be remembered are tension pneumothorax, tamponade, toxins. Toxin means drug reactions, overdoses, and poisonings. Two kinds of thrombosis, pulmonary thrombosis and coronary thrombosis. When we say pulmonary thrombosis, it actually means pulmonary embolism. So friends, all the discussion of prevention revolves around 5H and 5Ts. So I humbly suggest you make a poster and put it in your all the critical areas, in your RMO's room, in your nursing station, so that gradually people get embedded in their head that if a patient deteriorates, let me go through the checklist. I will, Dr. Mamata Das, I will post this H and T's in my comments once I finish the lecture. Now, the important aspect when we get a patient for a gallstone, we get a patient for a hysterectomy, we get a patient for anything as small as a hernia. See, remember, as one of the surgical specialties, once I touch a patient, the responsibility is entirely mine, whether I am doing only a urethral dilatation under local analgesia. I will narrate some of the stories which made me wiser. In my life going through the complications. So, when we get a patient, the first point I want to say, what is my calculation on his risk factors? Is the voice clear with friends? Can somebody type me? Because some of them are writing voice not clear. Can Dr. Umesh Raj, you type that the voice is okay? Audio is okay? So, thank you sir, no human mind can remember all the things all the time. So I suggest a protocol driven, because the smaller systems do not have very brilliant critical care anesthetist, internist. So what I suggest, you get these 3-4 charts made, which your house officer has to fill. Welcome, Dr. Reddy. These 4 charts have to be filled by your house officer or a senior nurse and put to you before the case is posted. So what are those 4 important checklists? Number 1, the MACE risk factors. MACE stands for Major Adverse Cardiac Events. What are those? Acute MI, unstable angina, cardiac failure, arrhythmias, and sudden cardiac death. So what are the risk factors? Namely 6. Past history of coronary artery disease, congestive failure, past history of cerebral vascular accident, a diabetic on insulin, renal failure, and major abdominothoracic or vascular surgery. So these are 6 items. Each one carries 1 score. Anything more than 3 takes the chances of having a perioperative MI or a failure or an arrhythmia very high. So as a busy clinician, you may not be able to file the checklist, but you must train somebody who can write it down so that your life is easy. Second important checklist is Ariscott score for pulmonary complications. At this point, I want to highlight that patients who undergo major abdominal surgery, even gynae oncology, if they develop chest infection, chest complications, in first 1 month, there is a good series reported with GI surgeries. Around 11% people develop major chest complications, and 30% of them would die within 30 days. Thereby, out of every 100 Whipples we do, 3 can die from lung complications if not taken care of. And friends, lung complications are nearly always preventable. So there is a scoring system called Ariscott scoring system, which means age more than 80, saturation less than 95, history of recent chest infection, preoperative anemia, a abdominothoracic incision, duration of surgery more than 3 hours, and emergency surgery. Now, all these items any resident doctor or a nurse can fill. Similarly, there are modified Wells criteria. The Wells modified Wells criteria is for risk of pulmonary embolism. So, without going into details, because these protocols I will put it up after the discussion is over so that it is accessible to all friends. So there should be somebody to fill these risk protocols beforehand. When you start filling, friends, then you will realize what you thought was a straightforward gallbladder or a straightforward appendectomy. The surgery may be straightforward, the patient may not be. Hence, when you know the score in front of you, you become vigilant. When you become vigilant, you move ahead of the complications. So maybe you will see them less often if you're vigilant. Now, there are certain points. These are the pre-operative issues. Do not decide to operate in hurry ever. There are surgeons who speak very high about their skills, and some of them are pretty popular and high earning people. They say, oh, I can do gallbladder at 7th day, at 8th day, at 9th day, whenever it comes. Then they say, I have no problems with it. Dr. Eggleston used to say, okay, you don't have a problem with it, but somebody else on the table has a problem with it. Friends, we as surgeons are anatomists. We can know our anatomy, but we have no control over physiology and over pathology of the tissues. When the tissues don't hold your clips, when they don't hold your ties, howsoever skilled you may be, you are bound to have more complications. And the data worldwide says so. So we should not violate principles for the reason of quick money, saving time, unresuscitated patient taking to theatre because I have to go for another case in another hospital. Remember, for this patient, this is the first and last operation this patient is undergoing. And somebody has trusted his life in you. So do not violate the principles. If you do not violate the principle, you will have enough of business, enough of money, much more than you can spend in your life. Take this word from me. Also, in the preoperative preparation, we need to look at the drug history. Currently, half the patients who come to hospital over 50 years of age are under at least more than 5 medications. Somebody needs to not only look at the prescriptions, because some of the prescriptions written by our friends can only be made out by a chemist. Not even his wife can read what he has written. Hence, one of the senior nurse or a junior doctor needs to look at all the tablets, their contents, and serve in a plate in front of you as a surgeon. I understand a district surgeon, a small nursing home surgeon is overworked. Let us delegate responsibility. Let us make our life easy and make patients' life safe by having at least a good paramedic or a good junior doctor. Now, few drugs I want to share which are important. Patients on beta blockers should continue on beta blockers because beta blockers lower mortality. I repeat, beta blockers lower mortality from coronary artery disease. And then aspirin. Patients who are on aspirin, if you are not doing some kind of neurosurgical procedures, an ophthalmic surgery or a prostate, please continue the patients on aspirin who are a high risk undergoing such surgeries. When you think the risk of bleeding is more, this I have covered 2 months ago, then you stop aspirin and give them a heparin cover perioperatively. Now, a point about ACE inhibitors. Patients who are already on ACE inhibitors should continue on ACE inhibitors. If they are withdrawn for a day, they should be started as soon as possible. Third point, statins. Patients who are on statins should be continued. A high-risk patient like a diabetic, hypertensive, obese, who is undergoing any surgery, statins lower the mortality. How? Even when stress test is negative. I repeat, stress test is negative. The patient is diabetic, hypertensive, overweight, smoker. Now, this is the guy who carries a risk of perioperative major adverse cardiac events. 40 milligrams of atorvastatin started 3 days before. France, 40 milligram 3 days before. They stabilize the endothelial membrane, prevent the rupture of atheromatics plaque. So, high-risk patients start atorvastatin 3 days before. Now, there is another concept. We as Indian surgeons, we need to know some basics of diabetes and hypertension management, prevention of these things. Because until you have married a medical specialist, even he or she may not come to help you in a preventive way, considering all is well, don't worry, I am there, don't worry. But that doesn't work out. Till somebody is on the bedside, taking good history, physical examination, evaluating the patient, just say, don't worry, I am around. Nobody is Bhagwan Brahma to solve all the issues. So, an important point I want to raise is, recently in last 3-4 years, there are a lot of publications of a anti-diabetic oral drug OHA group called SGLT2, sodium glucose cotransferase inhibitors, and these are gliflozins. This group of salts in a diabetic type 2 given perioperatively, they decrease the mortality from cardiac viewpoint. So I am not expecting my general surgical friends to know everything about diabetes, but you can suggest to your physician that I am taking this high risk patient diabetic for surgery. Would you like to convert him to the SGLT2 inhibitors? So your suggestion might provoke a thought process in your medical friend to start these drugs. Pre-operatively, taking care of people at high risk of pulmonary embolism by adding heparins in the perioperative area can be useful in decreasing the chances of. Then comes the intraoperative. This was all pre-operative. Now intraoperative, remember, any surgery which can be done under neuroaxial block has lower risks of lung complications. Then pain management. Whenever you start a laparotomy, think of pain management is one single thing which will decide your outcomes. And all good surgeons should plan pain management ahead of their surgery. Why? Number one, it is emotionally and psychologically tough on the family and patient when in modern era the patient is crying of pain post-operative. Remember 3 important questions which every patient from paronychia till esophagectomy is curious to know about. Number 1, do I carry a risk of life following this procedure? Number 2, will I have severe pain in post-operative period? Number 3, is this the full and final operation, or am I likely to be subjected to another operation later? Risk of life we all want to control, but we cannot always control. The last thing also, we cannot, after a good hernia repair, I cannot guarantee that my patient will not come into 20% who are going to recover. But pain is one thing we can control 100% in modern era. Hence, a plan of local blocks, infiltration and epidural analgesia should be planned beforehand. It decreases the chances of perioperative MACE. It decreases the chances of perioperative lung complications because patient doesn't have pain, he can breathe well, he doesn't get atelectasis, he doesn't get lung infections, collapse, and hence the lung complications can be prevented. Now, intraoperative, we need to request our anesthesiologist to prevent high tidal volumes, and we need delicate tissue handling. Spend time. Don't trust, no, God will help each one of us. But let us not leave the hemostatic control on God, saying God willing all will go well. When a surgeon says God willing all will go well, probably 50% will not God will not be willing. Then we need to target at goal directed therapy. When I say goal directed therapy, you should give enough fluid for tissue oxygenation. At the same time, we should not overload the patient. So it should be a zero balance kind of fluid. We will discuss sometime goal directed therapy as a separate topic. Now, two more perioperative drugs which are requiring mention. When we have patient on regional analgesia with epidural catheters, lot of analgesics are avoided. Now there are mention about two common things. When you give ibuprofen or naproxen, they decrease the effect of aspirin. The anticoagulant effect of aspirin is decreased by these two drugs. And if you give diclofenac in absence of aspirin, it increases the chances of perioperative MI. Now, WHO safety list needs a special mention during all operative procedures. Let me say at least if I've gone around ORs of 20 hospitals in Delhi, the private sector, so-called good hospitals in Delhi, only 3 or 4 hospitals are practicing WHO safety list in letter and spirit. All others are doing just the paperwork. And this is waiting for a disaster to occur. Now, with this kind of thing, now in post-operative period, one important thing is intra-op hypothermia. Some of the operating rooms are pretty cool, and because the parallel room is used by orthopods for joint replacement. So joint replacement requires 20-degree temperature. But then there is an elderly man undergoing cholecystectomy who is frozen at 20 degrees. And let me point out, friends, you must insist that your anesthetist uses a nasal probe to check the thermometer temperature through the operation. Hypothermia kills the patient. Hypothermia kills the anastomotic healing. Hypothermia has adverse effect on everything. Who is going to monitor? Most of my experience in several hospitals, well, I worked in smaller setups more, the temperature is not bothered either by surgeon. Surgeon thinks it is anesthetist's job. Anesthetist thinks he has put the guy on sleep, my job is over. So we must be sensitive to hypothermia to prevent perioperative complications. So there is no limit to the list which we can discuss. So when we make ward rounds post-operative, remember the complications given in the textbook have happened and they are written by some authorities, and let us respect and learn from their experience. Good evening, Dr. Pandey. Welcome. So when we make rounds, it should be a scientific round. I suggest and request all general surgeons to make rounds with a stethoscope. This is my study over more than 200 general surgeons. People who do not carry their own stethoscope on rounds seldom auscultate the chest. And it is a status symbol today not to carry a stethoscope. With a smile they say, oh, I am a surgeon, I am not a physician. But they forget the best surgeon also has an organ or two above the diaphragm, and which can kill the patient even after best pancreatic duodenectomy. So friends, auscultating the lungs and the heart and looking at the trachea and looking at the ventilation and the breathing pattern has an impact in the ultimate outcome. Otherwise what happens? You make a good morning round and smile and say patient will be discharged in the tomorrow morning, and in the evening you are called, the patient is coding. Something happens in between. A bright guy is one who can move ahead of the complications, who can think what can go wrong on third post-operative day in this obese patient who is diabetic and has undergone right hemicolectomy. So scientific rounds, not social rounds. Very common, they ask the senior resident, all is well? They said yes. There's another trend. Not here, it happens in US also. The surgeons feel it below dignity to make rounds. They will not see their patient for 48 hours. Believe me, the best resident of Cleveland Clinic is also a resident. Otherwise, he could have been designated as an associate or a full professor. So, we should trust our juniors to a level and limit. They may be brilliant. They may have solved all 100% MCQs, but the real life scenario takes time. So, at this conjuncture, I would like to summarize the things as useful to a common peripheral district surgeon. Number one, anticipate the risk factors. I will go slow on this. Number one, anticipate the risk factors with a checklist to be filled and looked at it seriously before taking a patient for surgery. Take time to select patients. Know your limitation after looking at the checklist, that if I have a patient, I may be the best surgeon for doing a gallbladder or a right hemicolectomy. But if I do not have in-house cardiologist, for a patient who has already undergone CABG and still smoking on irregular treatment, I should send him to a place, not because that surgeon is better, because his team is better. We have to be a team player. We have to think that at a district level, it is like session court. Every case is not decided at session court. Some cases are sent to High Court. Some cases are sent to Supreme Court. So don't imagine yourself that you are all in institute. Even, I have exemplified this before, even some of us may have been SRs in All India Institute 5 years ago. Maybe some of us were associate professors 3 years ago in All India Institute. But now once he's in Ludhiana or Amritsar, he doesn't have that backup plan. So, if he doesn't have that backup plan, should he do the same case same way? No. Will the outcome would be same? No. So, know your limitations when you are presenting a case, when you are taking up a case. Then, be a thinking surgeon. We are not only cutters. The correct definition of a good surgeon is a physician who is trained to operate. You must think of the total human perspective. There is no point of treating a good gallbladder of a diabetic to get him back 3 months later from gangrene of his toe, because we didn't bother. We don't check his pulses. We did not educate him. What happens? For a diabetic, a typical corporate hospital style, send a referral to the medicine department. Medicine will come, they write their insulin, and for them the concern about the totality is gone. They only look at the glycemic index and gone. But some of us have to take responsibility of another human being who has trusted us. Pre-operative optimization. Don't eat a hot potato. You will burn your face, cheek, and you will not enjoy it. What I want to tell that do not decide surgery in hurry. Always think, if he was my uncle, will I take him up today, or would I like to have better glycemic control, better hypertension control, and take him up for surgery maybe next week, maybe 2 weeks down the lane. Intraoperatively, communicate with your anesthesiologist, follow the safety list. I follow a dictum. Till the DVT pump is not applied, my boys will not start painting. So when they don't start painting, the pump quickly appears. Otherwise, they is busy in the other theater. Hold on, we will see. You proceed. When you can do a high-risk patient under neuroaxial anesthesia, if feasible, prefer it. And you must give goal-directed IV fluids during all major surgery. Prevent hypothermia. Hypoperfusion also with goal-directed. If there is 15% hypovolemia, there would be 30% shrinkage in splanchnic blood supply, leading to the anastomotic failures. One of my individual thought process, which I have lived with, mobile phones and WhatsApp chat has killed down the anesthesia intraoperative care in our country. This doesn't happen in England, it doesn't happen in US. Here, in most of the hospitals, we have an outstanding anesthesiologist. When I say outstanding, doesn't mean brilliant. That means one who stands outside the operating room. Most of them are chit-chatting some 200 yards away with an anesthesia technician or a first-year resident looking after the patient. Or if even they are physically present in the OR, they are looking at their WhatsApp chat more than the monitor. I have created a special post, what I call it as a yell boy. One of my boys keeps looking at the monitor in any adverse issue. And let me tell you my lifetime experience, this yell boy has prevented a lot of catastrophes when the anesthetist was looking at the WhatsApp. This is like a truck driver who's playing WhatsApp and driving a truck. We don't permit that, right? We fine them, but we cannot fine our anesthesiologist. So the sensible solution is ask one of the junior guys on the list when you're doing a sick patient to keep an eye on the monitor. And as the pulse rate goes up or the temperature comes down or you have hypoxic events or end-tidal goes up, he gradually whispers you, and then you wake up your friend or call him inside that, sir, please help me. Many catastrophes have been avoided in my unit with the concept of yell boy. This is a non-textbook concept. I am here today to share how I have lived life. And for young surgeons, this is my advice. Try to engage the senior most anesthetist in the town, because at least he has seen lot more complications intra-op than what you have read even. So he will be a big asset. The formula is simple. be polite, offer 500 rupees more, fix 2 days in advance, and he will come. Pamper him. Pampering your anesthesiologist at times can give you more peace than pampering your mother-in-law. We, surgeons in India are selectively poor when it comes to buying a car. We want to take an Audi. When it comes to putting glazed tiles in our house, we will say, show us the best world-class tiles. But when it comes to buying equipment, I find they will go for the cheapest models. Always keep asking what can be cheaper, what can be cheaper. When it comes to books, we are the most selective poor people. Number one, to purchase. Number two, to read. So, stay with the patient when the patient is being transferred out. Now, on operative period, do a scientific round, spend time with the patient. An elderly lady, diabetic who is sleeping, always wake her up, talk to her. Somebody who can comprehend well, can communicate well, the brain is well perfused. And use the most expensive machine in the ward called the stethoscope. You will be wiser always. Now there is another concept which I have been propagating. I call it 66 rupees concept. In periphery and in some of the corporate hospitals also, the physiotherapist will come once in the morning for 5 minutes and go back and charge 300-500 rupees. For common surgical issues, there is no great skill required which a trained nurse cannot learn. So, worst scenario, if you have got only 10 patients and if you have a GNM, ANM, an average salary of 20,000 rupees, it comes 66 rupees per day per patient, which I think all surgeons can afford. Train her for incentive spirometry, chest physiotherapy, buy her some basic equipment which will not cost more than 10,000 rupees. And calf exercises. Now, this is the kind of in-house trained nurse who is certified nurse, knows about the case, diagnosis and management, and will give physiotherapy 4 hourly, 3 hourly to her patients, maybe 2 hourly. Which, let me confess, working in a 500-bedded corporate hospital, when I need a physiotherapy, I need to go down in the basement, talk to the head of physiotherapy, request him politely, like, Mr. Thomas, will you be kind enough to come personally for this patient with thoracoplasty I did? Until I pamper them, the main guy will always send a chotu girl who will just come for 5 minutes and go away. So, create your own resources. Believe in yourself. Train your manpower. So that is my 66 rupees concept. When it comes to IV fluid, friends, you need to be very knowledgeable on IV fluids. Because I have said in the beginning, the 5H includes hypokalemia and hyperkalemia. Always think at the cellular level. I repeat, You should be a thinking surgeon. You should be a metabolic surgeon if you want to see less of catastrophe in your life. Otherwise, every now and then you will say, oh, he was an old man, he developed MI and he died. Then you will be facing MI more often. And the public today is not going to excuse you for MI. And always look at every patient. Is he a candidate for pulmonary embolism? Is he a candidate for MACE? Is he likely to develop chest infection? Am I doing enough to prevent that? And hypothermia outside the ward, even in ICUs. An elderly patient is very fragile character which can have hypothermia. And one important CMC concept which I have not been able to achieve even in world-class hospitals, so-called, where I work. In an air-conditioned room, a oral breather guy taking a oral temperature in a sick patient is absolutely wrong. If you need a temperature, it has to be a rectal temperature. Even in a small hospital, a 40-bedded surgical unit in my last working, we had electronic rectal thermometers where the probe is left in the rectum. It is a mindset. It doesn't cost more than 20,000 rupees. You leave a probe permanently into the rectum of a patient on ventilator, and whenever you want, you click the button and the temperature will come. That is the true things. Then we should have as many monitors. When we have less qualified, less intelligent, less in number employees, we should have more monitors. At least most nurses I have met, their BP will always vary between 120 to 140 systolic, some 70 to 90 diastolic. One person will write at 7 p.m., then everybody else will fill the same. So having more monitors of good quality will make your life easy. You have early alarm, but monitors do not replace a sensible clinician with open mind, with a brilliant brain, who can look at the flaring of nasal ali, who can count the respiratory rate going up from morning rounds, who can feel the warmth, the dryness of the palms, and look at the tongue and conjunctiva. But monitors still help to a large extent. Follow the principles. Remember, the best surgeon on the earth cannot control physiology and pathology of tissues. He can modify. Do not intervene at the time when the patient is not fit for. Let the inflammatory process settle down. And, well, friends, these are few things which are technical, how to prevent, how to pick up a complication early. Believe me, with a very over busy unit, with 8 to 10 cases a day and a huge OPD crowd, following protocols have not given me any sleepless nights, except once in a while when a fresh trauma comes in. So, this lecture was tailored the way how I looked at it, the way how I worked throughout my life. But I am subject to criticism. I am open. I am an elderly surgical student. I am willing to learn from all of you. Please put up your comments and I would love to reply. And the next session, because it has taken a lot of time, a continuous an hour's time, and maybe next week we will talk on social skills. Well, I specialize in social skills too, but let me tell you, luck helps the intelligent and hardworking, and your social skills are an additional icing on the cake. Social skills primarily don't heal people. Social skills do not satisfy the crowd. If the old man is shifting from oxygen to BiPAP and to a ventilator, howsoever sweet you may be, nothing is going to work. Remember, that is why some of the very tough talking surgeons have done exceptionally well, because they gave good results. But I would love to share a lot more on the social aspects sometime at the end of coming week. And nice for you to stay with me on a Sunday evening, quite late. Wish you a very bright week ahead. You do more surgery, you make more name, fame and money. Okay, wish you all the best.